Well, good morning. Welcome to Debbie's Back Porch. So glad to have you with us. You know, I'm doing low-carb recipes now, and my friend Faye Burton had one I wanted to try. This is a low-carb bread made with almond flour, and this is Faye's recipe. Looks pretty yummy, doesn't it? And boy, it is yummy. And listen, if you'd give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, we would really appreciate it. Now let me show you how I put this together. So I'm going to do ingredients and carb counts fast, but it'll be in the info section. This is almond flour. I'm using 1.5 cups. That's 18 net grams of carbs total. Little salt, no carbs. Tablespoon baking powder, 4 carbs. The cream cheese is, we're using 1 ounce. That's 2 carbs, 2 grams of carbs, 6 eggs, maybe 1 carb apiece. The butter is none. Let's put this all together. Oh, that's cream of tartar. I hope you didn't try to write all that down. I'm writing it down. So this is 1/4 teaspoon cream of tartar into my 6 egg whites, and we're going to beat this into a meringue. And I'm actually going to do this in real time just to show you how quickly it goes. This was a very easy recipe. Didn't take a lot of time. So you could whip this out for breakfast one morning if you wanted to. And I'm going to tell you, this is a bread that was made for toast and butter and some nice preserves. That's actually what I had for supper. I toasted some and had some nice preserves, sugar-free preserves on it. And it satisfied that bread craving. You know, that's my downfall. You know, I love bread. And I'm trying several different kinds of flours to make bread with. And I'm going to show you that journey. And a lot of the low-carb flours use eggs to give it some leavening, some rise, and also some lightness. Because most of the low-carb flours, the coconut and the almond, and the carbulose, which I'm showing a little of that, they can be heavy. So you make a meringue and you fold it in, and that gives you not only leavening, but it introduces air into the mixture and makes it lighten up. So you see how I'm beating this. We're going to go to Faye's recipe said a firm peak. I may go beyond that to a stiff peak. I'm not. See, that doesn't stand up yet. We're going to keep going. But I wanted you to see how quickly you can do this. You don't have to have a KitchenAid. Little hand mixer would do it. As a matter of fact, I have done it with a whisk, but you know, my arms get tired now. They're old arms. And so I like this little hand mixer. This, by the way, is a cheap little mixer, and it just does a great job. I think I paid $10 for it. And I use it all the time. Anytime I don't have a huge portion that needs the KitchenAid, I just use this little hand mixer. It's great for potatoes. So we're almost there. Let's beat it just a little bit more. You could probably stop there, but I'm gonna get those nice stiff peaks. So how long has this been? Maybe 3 minutes, 4. I didn't keep track. But it doesn't take long, and then we get this nice stiff peak. And there you go. See how that stands up? All there is to it. Next step. So I've sifted together my 1.5 cups almond flour, tablespoonful of baking powder, and a pinch of salt. I have my 4 egg yolks here, and I'm going to beat them up just a little bit and put them right into the flour baking powder mixture. And I'm going to tell you that Faye's recipe calls for a pinch of salt, and I interpreted that to be 1/4 teaspoonful, and I interpreted it wrong. I actually made it just a little bit too salty. She really means just a pinch of salt, and that's what I'm going to show you in the recipe. So maybe 1/8 teaspoonful. In goes the melted butter. That's 1 ounce of butter, 2 tablespoons. And in goes the softened cream cheese. You can't tell it here, but it really is softened. I left it out for a couple hours to get good and soft. And I'm going to start beating this or mixing this just with a fork. I will get the mixer to it in a minute, but right now I just want to get all the ingredients together and everything sort of moistened, and that's just easier done with a fork. And it starts out very, very stiff, but as it combines, it gets nice and much easier to handle. I'm going to have a mixer, though, to get that cream cheese in. So there's my mixer. I took it right out of my egg whites. And then I'm going to ladle in about a third. Now, I didn't measure. I'm just eyeballing it. About a third of this beautiful meringue, the egg whites. And I'll use the mixer to beat that part in. And you know, when you're using the mixer now, you're beating some of the air out of it. To mix it now, you're going to deflate it some. So I'm only going to use the mixer for a little bit. Just enough to get the almond flour sort of wet all the way through, to beat up that cream cheese, and to get it kind of consistent. Make sure I don't have any lumps. And you know, as I said, I'm doing this whole thing in real time, except of course for the baking. But the mixing, it's all in real time. So you see, this does not take very long. And there you go. Now, I'm going to add the rest of the egg whites. And then I want to be careful with them not to actually beat or stir all the air out of them. The eggs, not only are eggs good and add richness and flavor, they're also a leavening agent. The egg whites are. When you beat them up like this, they're going to give you some lightness and rise. So we don't want to beat all of the air out of them. So I'm going to fold them in. And I'm not sure how much to fold them in. My idea here is that you want to fold them in until you have a consistent batter, so that the eggs and the flour and the butter and everything are all mixed together. But you could tell from this volume-wise that this mixture is primarily egg whites. There's more egg whites than anything else by volume. So I'm going to get the rest of it in. Scrape it down pretty well. You know, I don't know that you'd call this keto. I don't know that you'd call it, I know it is low carb. It's kind of hard to define keto if you haven't done a lot of reading and research on it. And I'm not an expert by any means on it. But keto's not just about how many carbs are in an individual dish. I'm switching over to this spatula to mix the rest of this up. It's about your total intake for the day and what your body uses, and keeping your carb intake below the level where you go into ketosis. I'm not going to try to explain it any further than that, only that in ketosis you will burn fat. I'm not advocating any diet. I just eat low carb because I'm diabetic. So this is mixed up well. Looks pretty good. I was gentle. Let me get my pan. I've preheated my oven to 375. And I've heavily buttered my little cast iron bread pan here. This is my little Lodge cast iron bread pan. Makes a beautiful crust. So I'm going to put all of this in here. And this takes me a second because I'm a little clumsy with the camera. But I'll get it all in. I don't want to waste any of it. You know, a word for cooking with cast iron. It just holds the heat, makes a nice crust on bread. You can find cast iron bread pans. They're not very expensive. They'll last forever. Your grandchildren and great-grandchildren can use them. And my great-granddaughter has helped me cook in these, and So someday they'll be hers. Oven preheated to 375. I'm going to stick that in. Now the time on the recipe says between 30 and 45 minutes, or until a toothpick inserted comes out clean. I'll tell you, I started with 30 minutes. It wasn't enough. I went 10 more minutes. So in my stove, this took 40 minutes. You know that's going to vary. I would start with 30 minutes and then test it. I'm going to wipe this off a little bit. I don't want that to bake on it. So far it looks like bread. Looks more like a biscuit than yeast bread. And after 40 minutes, this is what I have. I'll show you. I tested it with a toothpick. I don't want to mess up the crust. So I'll go in that little fold there. See, it comes out clean. I'm going to let this cool in the pan for about 5 minutes to make sure it loosens from the sides. I'll be right back and show you that. So I went around the edges with a spatula to make sure it wasn't sticking, and it wasn't. So let's turn this out, and it's still pretty hot. It's been about 5 minutes. And it turns out really nicely. Look at that. It's bread. And if you're craving bread, you know, that's a beautiful sight. So you do need to let it cool a bit before you cut it. I don't think as much as yeast bread, though, because it's a different kind of crust. So it's been about 15 minutes. I'm going to slice a piece off. And it slices very nicely. You know, I've got it on a rack there. And look at that. Look at that texture. That's a beautiful texture. Looks great. It actually, the color from the almond flour, it kind of looks like pound cake. I've got some butter ready here, and this time I remembered to soften it. And then I forgot I had softened it. So I'm going to just slather butter on this and give it a taste. I'm pretty excited about trying this. You think that's enough butter? I'm not sure. I might get some more on there. So, you know, this is really good bread. 2 points. I actually did put a little bit much salt in it. A 1/4 teaspoonful is way too much. Cut that back to 1/8 teaspoon. The texture is very good. Just calls for toast and preserves or syrup. I'm going to enjoy this. The other thought I had is that add a little sweetener of your choice, Splenda or erythritol, and some vanilla or lemon flavoring, and you're going to have a passable pound cake. The texture is already there, and this could be adapted to many, many treats. Thank you to Faye Burton for allowing me to video her recipe, and thanks to all of you for watching. Hope to see you again tomorrow on Debbie's Back Porch.